My name is Janeth, and I am 65 years old. Halloween has always been a joyful tradition in my family. Every year, my children bring their kids over to my house, and we celebrate together. The porch gets decorated with pumpkins, lanterns, and cobwebs. The living room is filled with music and laughter, and the kitchen counter is always stacked with candy and snacks. It's a night where everyone gets to dress up, have fun, and feel like kids again, no matter their age. I always loved seeing my grandchildren in their costumes. They would parade around the living room, showing off to each other, while the adults sipped drinks and talked in the kitchen. For as long as I can remember, it had always been that way, a safe, warm, and happy tradition. But one year, that changed. One year, our party was interrupted by something none of us expected. Something I still think about to this day. It was a chilly October evening. The leaves had already turned and littered the yard in orange and red. I had a simple witch's robe and hat on, more for fun than anything else, while my grandchildren wore costumes ranging from superheroes to princesses. The adults, my son David, my daughter Marissa, and their spouses, helped themselves to food in the kitchen, while keeping an eye on the children. The house was alive with sound, laughter, footsteps, music playing faintly from a speaker. It was everything a family gathering should be. Until sometime after 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I thought it was odd at first. We had already gotten a few trick-or-treaters earlier in the evening, but my porch light was turned off now to signal we were done. Still, I assumed maybe a few late kids had stopped by. When I opened the door, it wasn't kids standing there. It was a man. He was dressed in a clown costume. His face was covered in white paint, with exaggerated red lips drawn into a permanent smile. His curly wig was an unnatural shade of blue, and the outfit itself looked old and ill-fitting, as though it had been thrown together from a thrift store bin. He was tall, much taller than me, easily 6'4", and he didn't move when I opened the door. He simply stared at me. "Trick or treat," he said at last. His voice was low and flat. I froze. Something about it felt wrong. Halloween is for children, for families. Teenagers pushing the limit, sure, but not grown men. Not men who looked to be in their 30s or 40s, standing silently on a stranger's porch at night. Before I could react, my 8-year-old granddaughter came bounding up beside me. She giggled and held out a small bag of chocolates we'd prepared. "Here you go, Mr. Clown," she said cheerfully, dropping the candy into his open hand. The man closed his fingers around the bag but didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at us. I forced a polite smile. "All right." "Thank you, and have a good night," I said, closing the door firmly. For a moment, I thought that was it, that he would move on, but he didn't. About 15 minutes later, Marissa came over to me with a worried look. "Mom," she whispered, "he's still out there." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Look." She pulled the curtain back slightly in the living room window. My heart sank. The clown was standing on the sidewalk, directly in front of the house. He wasn't walking away, wasn't knocking on other doors. He was just standing there, facing my house. I felt a wave of unease wash over me. "Maybe he's just resting," I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing. But he wasn't resting. He wasn't moving at all. He was simply watching. We tried to continue the party, but the atmosphere shifted. The adults grew quiet, exchanging nervous glances. The kids noticed the tension, and even though we tried to reassure them, they knew something wasn't right. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang again. This time, more forcefully. David stood up. "I'll handle it." "Don't open the door," I said quickly. "Mom, we can't just let him stand there," David replied, already walking over. I grabbed his arm. "Something isn't right about this." But he pulled away. He didn't open the door, but he spoke loudly through it. "Hey, you need to leave. This is private property. If you don't, we're calling the police." Silence. David peered through the peephole. His face paled. "He's right there. He's just smiling at the door." My stomach dropped. We all stood frozen, barely breathing. Then, after a long moment, David said quietly, "Okay, he's walking away." Relief hit me, but it didn't last long. When I went to the kitchen a few minutes later, I made the mistake of looking out the back window. He was there, standing at the edge of the yard, just beyond the reach of the porch light, his painted face tilted upward, staring at the house. His stillness was what disturbed me most. He wasn't trying to open a door or sneak closer. He was just watching. I gasped and pulled the curtain shut, locking the back door immediately. Marissa grabbed her phone. "That's it. I'm calling 911. She explained to the dispatcher that a strange man in a clown costume had been lingering around our house for almost an hour, frightening the family. The operator told her officers would be on the way. In the meantime, we gathered all the kids into the living room. Their little faces were filled with confusion and fear. My youngest grandson whispered, "Grandma, why is the clown scary?" I couldn't answer. Those next 15 minutes were some of the longest of my life. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow outside felt like him. Finally, the sound of sirens cut through the night. Red and blue lights flashed across the curtains as a patrol car pulled up in front of the house. 2 officers entered the yard with flashlights, sweeping the property. But by the time they arrived, the clown was gone. They searched around the house, even in the woods behind the backyard, but found nothing. "You're not the first call tonight," one officer said. A few neighbors reported a man in a clown costume wandering the block. But every time we show up, he disappears. That didn't make me feel any better. It made it worse. This wasn't a one-time prank. He'd been circling the neighborhood, deliberately unsettling people, and no one knew why. The police took our statement and told us to call again if he returned. They promised to patrol the area more frequently that night. But as the officers left, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still nearby, watching from somewhere we couldn't see. We ended the party early. The children were restless and frightened, clinging to their parents. None of us felt like celebrating anymore. That night, after everyone left, I sat awake in my bed long after midnight. I kept thinking about the man's face, the painted smile, the stillness, the way he stood in the backyard as though he belonged there. I stared at the ceiling, listening for any sound outside. Every creak of the house made my skin crawl. It has been years since that night, but I haven't hosted a Halloween party the same way since. I no longer open the door for strangers. I keep the lights dimmed and the curtains shut. My family still visits, but I'm always on edge, especially once it gets dark, because I'll never forget the way that man looked at us. And I know now that sometimes the scariest thing about Halloween isn't the ghosts, or the costumes, or the decorations. It's the uninvited guest who refuses to leave. Halloween has always been one of the most anticipated times of year for college students. In small towns across America, it's the one night when nobody cares about homework, deadlines, or exams, because everyone is either out trick-or-treating, attending haunted houses, or finding a party to crash. In a quiet college town in Ohio, a sophomore named Luke decided to host his own Halloween party. He rented a modest 2-story house near campus with a wide backyard, and it seemed like the perfect place for a gathering. Luke wasn't the most popular guy on campus, but he was friendly, easygoing, and always willing to open his place for friends. By the time Halloween rolled around, he had decorated the house with orange lights, carved pumpkins on the front steps, and set up speakers that blasted music loud enough to spill into the street. By 9 o'clock that night, guests began to arrive. Some wore elaborate costumes. Others just wore cheap masks. The atmosphere quickly grew energetic. Music thumped, laughter echoed, and drinks were passed around. Among the crowd was Samantha, a freshman who came with 3 of her closest friends. They had decided to go as a themed group. Samantha dressed as a witch, one of her friends as a vampire, another as a zombie, and the last threw a sheet over herself to play the role of a ghost. At first, the party was everything Samantha expected. People danced, joked around, and Luke even held a little costume contest that got everyone laughing. Samantha, who was usually reserved, found herself having a surprisingly good time. But around 11 p.m., she noticed something that unsettled her. In the far corner of the living room, partially in shadow, stood a man in a skull mask and a black suit. His costume wasn't strange. Halloween was full of skeletons, monsters, and creepy characters, but what bothered Samantha was his behavior. He wasn't talking to anyone. He wasn't dancing. He wasn't holding a drink. He was just standing there, still, as if observing everyone in the room. At first, Samantha assumed he must have come with one of the other guests. But as the minutes ticked by, her unease grew. She eventually walked over to Luke, who was refilling drinks at the counter. "Hey," she asked, "do you know that guy in the corner? The one in the skull mask?" Luke turned to look, then frowned. "Who?" "Him? I thought he came with you guys." Samantha shook her head. "No, none of us know him." Luke looked confused but shrugged. "It's Halloween. Maybe he came with one of my friends. Don't worry about it." But Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The party continued, music pounding louder, people cheering and dancing. Every so often, Samantha glanced back toward the man in the corner. Each time it seemed like he had moved. Not far, just a few steps closer toward the center of the room. Every time she looked away and back again, he appeared slightly closer. By midnight, some of the guests had started leaving. The crowd thinned out a little, and Luke finally decided to approach the mysterious man. He walked over with a friendly smile. "Hey man, who'd you come with?" he asked, trying to sound casual. The man in the skull mask didn't respond. He just stared. Luke chuckled awkwardly. "You're really in character, huh? Okay, but seriously, who invited you?" Again, silence. Luke shifted uncomfortably, then reached out playfully as if to tug the mask off. "All right, I get it. You don't talk. But at least show me who you are." Before he could touch the mask, the man suddenly stepped back. Without a word, he turned and walked quickly toward the back door. He pushed it open and slipped outside into the yard. A few guests saw it happen and laughed, assuming it was part of the act. But Samantha felt a chill crawl down her spine. She went into the kitchen, where there was a small window facing the backyard. When she peered outside, her heart sank. The man was still there. He stood in the yard, motionless, facing the house. It looked like he was staring straight back at her through the glass. Panicked, Samantha called out for Luke. "He's still out there. Look." Luke hurried over, but when he leaned over her shoulder to see, the man was gone. The yard was empty, bathed only in the faint orange glow of the outdoor lights. "Probably just some random guy messing with us," Luke said, though his voice was uneasy. "He's gone now." The party wound down around 2 in the morning. Most guests left and the house grew quiet again. Samantha tried to brush it off as nothing more than a weird Halloween prank, though a knot of fear lingered in her chest. The next morning, Luke woke up late. As he cleaned up the aftermath of the party, he carried a bag of trash to the back door. That's when he saw it. On the wooden steps of the porch lay a single Polaroid photo. Frowning, Luke picked it up. His stomach turned cold as he realized what he was looking at. The photo showed the living room from the night before. In the picture, Samantha and her friends were dancing together, smiling, unaware of the camera. But behind them, standing just a few steps away, was the man in the skull mask. He was closer than either of them remembered him ever being. Much closer. Luke's hands trembled as he showed the photo to Samantha later that day. Her face went pale the second she saw it. "I swear he was never that close to us," she whispered. They asked around, but none of the guests had a Polaroid camera. Nobody remembered seeing anyone take that picture. To this day, Luke and Samantha still don't know who the man in the mask was, or how he managed to leave that photo behind. But one thing was certain: they never hosted another Halloween party at that house again. Halloween was always a big deal in Rachel's small Pennsylvania town. Every year, the high school hosted a party at the old community hall on the edge of town. It was a tradition that drew nearly every student, from freshmen to seniors. The building itself was decades old, with creaky wooden floors, faded wallpaper, and high ceilings strung with dim orange lights for the event. The school's student council rented a cheap DJ, put out bowls of candy and sodas, and let the night run itself. That year, Rachel, 17 years old, a junior, decided to go with her best friend Megan. Rachel wasn't a party person. She hated loud music and crowded rooms, but Megan had insisted. "Come on," Megan said earlier that week, tugging Rachel's arm in the hallway. "It's our second to last Halloween here. You'll regret it if you don't go." Rachel rolled her eyes but smiled. "Fine, but I'm not going all out with a costume." In the end, Rachel threw on a simple witch outfit, black dress, pointed hat, a little fake eyeliner to draw cracks across her face. Megan, more enthusiastic, dressed as a vampire, complete with fake fangs and a velvet cape. When they arrived at the hall around 9:30 p.m., the place was already buzzing. Music boomed from the speakers. Kids crowded around the snack table, and groups of classmates posed for photos in their costumes. Rachel tried to enjoy herself. She stood near Megan, sipping a soda, nodding along to the music. It was halfway through the night when she noticed him. At first, he blended in like everyone else. A clown costume, bright red and white striped outfit, oversized gloves, and a mask that looked old-fashioned, almost handmade. The mask's fabric was faded and sagging, painted with a crude, permanent smile and hollow black eyes. But something about him didn't sit right with Rachel. He didn't laugh, didn't dance, didn't even hold a drink. He just stood there. Across the room, near the edge of the crowd, his head turned slightly, following the movement of people. Every time Rachel looked, his gaze seemed fixed on her. She whispered to Megan, "Hey, do you know who that clown is?" Megan squinted. "Which one?" "Oh, him? No idea. Creepy mask, though. Do you think he's from our school?" Rachel asked. Megan shrugged. "Maybe. I've never seen that costume before. Probably someone's cousin or something." Rachel tried to brush it off. But as the night went on, the clown kept showing up. When she and Megan moved toward the snack table, he lingered just a few feet away. When they went to the other side of the hall, he seemed to drift in the same direction. Always silent, always watching. Around 11 p.m., a group of guys decided to mess with him. One of them, dressed as a zombie football player, walked up and slapped him on the shoulder. "Nice mask, man," the guy said loudly. "Where'd you get it?" The clown didn't respond. The guy chuckled and tapped the mask's cheek. "Creepy as hell. You win the costume contest, for sure." Nothing. Not a word. The group laughed nervously, then backed off, muttering about how weird he was. Rachel's stomach twisted tighter. She leaned toward Megan. "That's not normal, right?" "He hasn't spoken once." "Maybe he's just shy," Megan said, though she didn't sound convinced. By midnight, the party began to thin. Some kids left early, others lingered in small groups. Rachel and Megan decided it was time to go. As they stepped out into the cool night air, Rachel glanced back. The clown stood by the entrance of the hall, his head tilted slightly, watching them leave. Her heart skipped. Megan noticed her tense expression. "Hey, relax. It's just a costume. He's probably trying to freak people out." Rachel didn't answer. She quickened her pace down the dark sidewalk toward the parking lot. The lot was half empty, dimly lit by a few flickering lamps. As they reached Megan's car, Rachel hesitated before getting in. She couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her. "Megan," she whispered. "Do you see him?" Megan turned. The hall's doors were still open, and sure enough, the clown was standing there. Just standing in the doorway, his pale mask barely visible in the dark. "Okay, that's creepy," Megan muttered, fumbling with her keys. They both got in the car quickly. As Megan started the engine, Rachel kept her eyes locked on the hall. The clown hadn't moved. But as the car pulled away, Rachel saw the doors swing shut behind him. They reached Rachel's house a little after 12:30 a.m. The street was quiet, porch lights glowing faintly on the houses. Rachel felt relief wash over her as she stepped out of the car. "Text me when you're inside," Megan said, pulling away. Rachel nodded and hurried up the steps to her front porch. She unlocked the door, then froze. There, sitting neatly in the middle of the porch, was a mask. The same faded clown mask. Her heart pounded. She stumbled back a step, her breath catching. "No!" she whispered. Shaking, she snatched her phone and called Megan. He was here," Rachel stammered. "The mask. It's on my porch." "What? Are you serious?" Megan's voice rose. "Lock your door." "I'm coming back." Rachel's hands trembled as she unlocked the door, rushed inside, and threw the deadbolt. Her eyes darted to the windows, half expecting to see someone outside. When Megan arrived 10 minutes later, the mask was gone. Rachel swore she hadn't touched it, hadn't moved it. But the porch was empty, as though nothing had ever been there. The following days at school, Rachel asked around. Nobody admitted to wearing a clown costume. Nobody had any idea who he was. Some kids even said they didn't remember seeing him at all. But Rachel knew what she saw. So did Megan. And to this day, whenever Halloween approaches, Rachel still checks her porch at night, just to make sure nothing has been left behind.